Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is my good friend, my co-pilot, my producer, and extraordinary gentleman all the way around, Mr. Dan the Man in the studio. Hello, Dan. How are you today?
Hello, Chris, and hello to everybody out there. Hope everybody's doing well.
Hell yeah. By the time you folks hear this one, it's going to be bearing down on Labor Day weekend. So if you live in a place in the country where they actually have seasons, get out there and enjoy that summertime if that's what you like before it's going to go indoors and we're all cold again, which I prefer actually. So I'm very much looking forward to the fall. My good friend Dan told me he saw some fallen autumn leaves on the ground at his cabin. Is that a fact, Dan?
Yeah, I was. My dad and I were down there for overnight Saturday and Sunday, and when I went out to the truck, there were brown leaves on the truck.
Hell yeah. I'm excited. There's a tree right outside my window, actually, that starts to turn little by little. And usually not till probably the transition of August and September, but I'll see a little yellow in there. And I'm like, okay, here it comes. And then as everybody says down here, we got to enjoy it for a week because then it immediately goes into winter, unfortunately. We go from hot to cold. So, but welcome. We're glad you're here with us. If you're just stumbling across our podcast, we are a recovery-based podcast for whatever ails you, okay? We talk a lot about the 12 steps. We talk a lot about tools from the program. My background is a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, but we live in a world right now where there's so many things that afflict us that if you go to somebody and say, what's wrong with you, I believe the proper answer is, how much time do you have? Take a seat. And we're assailed at every turn from technology and sick people and addictions and consumerism and you name it. And we've lost sight of who we are. So recovery for us and what we want to bring you on this podcast is a chance to have these tools that we've been simmering on for 89 years within the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and all the other 12-step programs based on real life's experience. These are people's real life experience where they got these tools of what actually works to improve your life and to have a happier, more fulfilling existence. So we're glad you're here and we hope that we can give you some tools to use in your life today. So we're going to get right into the topic portion of our program today, and then we're going to have a discussion period where Dan and I will kick around the topic, and then we take your questions at the end of the podcast. So please, if you have a question about anything at all, you can send it to iam12recovery@gmail.com. Again, that is iam12, those 4 digits, recovery, the word recovery, @gmail.com. And I want to hear your all's questions because I know for a fact there's people out there who are having relationship issues. You're having family issues. You're having neighbor issues. Come on now. In this world, you've got all kinds of issues. As we say in the program, I got more issues than Sports Illustrated. So send those questions in and we will read them and give you free therapy without identifying you. It's completely anonymous. We will never tell who wrote. So please send them in. We'd be happy to hear from you, and thanks for being here with us today. So the topic I've chosen for today is I want to break down the 12 steps as a toolkit. There's a lot of mystery around this program. How does it work? What is it? There's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet saying that it's just gobbledygook, when in the fact it's a very scientific method to recover. And I guess I want to start with that area first. Pardon me for a second here. In that, what is the scientific method? Remember when you were in high school and we had to learn that? The scientific method is you set up a series of constructs and tests. And you take a subject, like a lab rat, and you put that lab rat through that very meticulous, same exact series of constructs and tests, and then you get a result, and you document it. Then you take the next lab rat, and you do the same thing, right? Well, we have a program where we've been doing this to millions of people. Lab rats, and they all do the same process if they do it right. Okay, there's a lot of variations on the steps, and a lot of people don't do the full 12-step cure. I'm sure Dan will have something to add to that. And so they get varying results. But if somebody does it the way it's supposed to be done, the rat comes out on the other end, and they're completely healthy and whole. And not only that, their entire life has a revolutionary, radical, drastic change for the better. Everything in their life gets better. I need to repeat that. Everything in their life gets better. You name it, I can tell you it got better in my sobriety. And I know we'll go to some meetings where there's some hardcore old-timers, and they like to say that, well, the program don't guarantee that we'll give you anything but your sobriety back. We'll give you your freedom from addiction, but nothing else. And I always tell my patients, seek out that old-timer after the meeting and ask them these questions. Do you have a better job today than you did before you came into this program? Most times they'll look at you and say, what job? I lost my job. Or do you have a better car? since you came in this program? Do you have a better quality of relationship? Do you have a better house? Is your life in way more manageable order? Are you happier? Are you more fulfilled? I could go on down the list, and every single area of their life will be dramatically, not just a little bit, like dramatically improved. So that's the evidence to me, and 40 years of walking this path in the program, and for 89 years that we've been practicing this all over the world with people of all different backgrounds, creeds, nationalities, religions, ethnic backgrounds, does not matter. We put them through the same constructs, they get the same results. It's truly a miracle tool. And you're going to hear by the end of the podcast, my personal belief is that I believe that higher power gave this to us to save us from ourselves. I used to have an old spiritual teacher named Marion, and she used to say that, do you think God would ever abandon us? And she would talk about how prophets walked the earth today, how we think about prophets back in the old days, and that, and we don't have them anymore. Really? Do you think that? So it's kind of interesting on the timing in the 1935 when these tools were made known to man, before we got into World War II, before the advent of technology and corporations, and look at the fix we're in. We're about to destroy ourselves. Maybe this revolutionary change can help us. So I'm going to break down the whole process for you today, give you a little bit of the origins of where it comes from, and then we'll talk about this toolkit, how you can use it individually, despite not being an addict or an alcoholic. So in 1935, Bill Wilson was flailing about trying to find his sobriety, and he was at his end. His doctor had sent him home to die. And that's a pretty hard pill to swallow, but that's exactly where he was. He'd been in and out of that treatment center at Towns Hospital so many times. Dr. Sokwer said, you're going to have to commit him. And Lois was not willing to commit him. And there's a great scene in the movie My Name is Bill W. where she goes into the loony bin and she sees these people in their bathrobes and she's like, I can't do this to my husband. And so she took him home. God bless her. And he's in there drinking himself to death. And Lois is left for the day. He's got these 2 bottles of bathtub gin, and he gets a call from his old schoolmate, Ebby, and they were best friends since they were in grade school. Ebby had found sobriety through this group called the Oxford Group. The Oxford Group was through the churches, and it was about honoring the teachings of Jesus on a more absolutist, concrete, real level. Okay, things like absolute honesty, absolute love, all those things, those principles. And in addition to that, they had acquired these tools of taking inventory, talking to others, making amends for past wrongs. They called them sins. And so the basics of the program were already baking in there. And Ebby had gone to that group and he had gotten sober. And Ebby was in worse shape than Bill was. So he was trying to bring this message to Bill on a mercy mission to say, hey, man, this is really working for me. I don't want to see you die. Why don't you come with me to this deal? Well, Bill didn't take it very well. But it stuck. And the one thing that stuck with him was this proposition that in this group, you were allowed to choose your own conception of a higher power. And that hit Bill very hard. He could scoff at everything else and say, oh, that's God jazz, blah, 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 blah. But the idea appealed to him intellectually. That was a very strong rarity in the world in 1935, a very backward time, mind you. If you went to any church or any group or any club, you had to believe like they believed or you were kicked out. Period. End of story. No discussion. So this proposition that you could actually come up with your own conception of spirituality, it just stuck with him. And then there were other things that happened with Dr. Carl Jung, and there were all these pieces that sort of came together. So the Oxford Group, I believe, had this 6-step toolkit program of their own to get well, so to speak. And this was just not for alcoholics. The alcoholics had adopted it and were living in the basement of Frank Buckman's church. And the parishioners upstairs were not very happy about the drunks downstairs. But this was a wide movement across the United States with a lot of churches working these tools. And Bill, for some reason, when he sat down to figure out the program and was getting his sobriety, about 6 months sober, he had the idea that he liked the number 12. And as far as I can tell from all the archives, that's basically, he thought it was a nice even number. And he also thought it would stretch him out a little bit. Little did he know alcoholics would need that time to go through this process to really absorb and not just jump right in. And he also thought it had spiritual significance, like the 12 apostles, things like that. So that's how it went from 6 to 12. And I was very fortunate that in my early recovery, they were touring the archives throughout the United States. This was probably 1984, 85. And down on the ground floor of the Metrodome, where the Minnesota Vikings played on the playfield, we got to go down there and look through all the documents. And I saw the original legal pad with Bill's scratching of the 12 steps I mean, to me, that's like sacred, holy document. That's the kind of stuff like the shroud. I mean, I'm looking at that going, holy crap. So I was infatuated with that, but I was also infatuated with the AstroTurf because I never realized how hard it was. And those guys are taking full body tackles on that. So what he did, though, is he broke it into these manageable pieces where almost every step in what's called the action portion of the steps, I'll explain that in a second, comes down to this simple thing of preparation and demonstration. Preparation, demonstration, which us alcoholics need. We need a little bit of time to work up to doing something, because if you tell your sponsee to go out and just do something, they're not going to do it. They're not ready for that. But if you tell them, well, let's work on praying about doing it, let's work on preparing to get ready to do it, and then they can go out and maybe do it. So that's what ended up happening when he broke down the program into 12, is it gave that little space for preparation, then the demonstration step, then the actual action. So the 12 steps are broken up into 3 general categories. The first 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, are considered the decision steps. There is literally very little action required from you to do physically during this portion. It's more of a meditative reflection period as to whether or not you need to do this process. And I'm going to take you through the process and explain the details. Steps 4 through 9 considered to be the action steps, which is the meat of the entire program. This is the actual work that if you do this part of the program, you will guaranteed have your life change and have great things happen for you. And then after that, we have steps 10 through 12, which are the maintenance steps. And that is the idea that now that you've done your program, you don't stop. You should continue to grow for the rest of your life. And that's the key word in step 10, continue. Unfortunately, a lot of people stop after they do the steps. They get their 1-year chip and they graduate. And then what happens? They relapse. They fall backwards. So that's it. You got the decision steps, you got the action part of the program, and then you got the maintenance piece. So let's break these down one by one, and I'll walk you through the process like we do with any sponsee. I'll wet my whistle for a second here. So the first thing you need to decide in step 1 is, have you lost control over fixing this problem yourself? By the time a person comes to a bottom of any kind, where they are just completely frazzled with the issue they're dealing with, they've already tried every other method that you can possibly imagine to fix it on their own. This is especially true in the West, because we are programmed with this idea that I don't need your help, I'm independent, I'm smart, I can figure it out. And so we're going to break our brain and hurt ourselves trying to fix it ourselves. But once you come to this place, it's all right, it's got me beat. That's it. Step 1, I'm powerless. I cannot fix this by myself. I need other tools. I need greater power. Hold on to that one. We'll get to that in step 2. But I need something, because what I got right now ain't working. And because of the result of the problem in my life has become more unmanageable. Unmanageability doesn't mean you lost your job. Be real clear about this. Unmanageability means you aren't sleeping at night because of the problem. You have anxiety because of the problem. You aren't treating your kids, or you're short with them because you're all stressed out because of the problem. You're wearing yourself out with this thing over here, and it's affecting your life in a negative way. Step 1 in a nutshell. Can you do it by yourself? And can you admit it's affected your life in a negative way? Real simple. Whatever the problem is in your life. Step 2. We're going to try and see if perhaps maybe there's a power out there that would be greater than yours that might be able to help you with your program, help you with your issue. And so what we want to do is we want to ideally get you to meetings where you can hear other people's testimonies. Now, if you're not a part of a group, you can easily go on YouTube and you can look up stories of people that have whatever affliction you're dealing with, whether it's gambling or eating or alcoholism, and hear their stories of recovery. And what that is that's a power. I know for myself, my sponsor being sober was a power I did not have. And then I went further down the line about his life. His life was manageable. He was paying his bills on time. He was living in a home, not in a halfway house. He had a wife that hadn't left him. He had a car that worked. All that stuff was like, okay, he's got something working for him that I don't have, and that gave me the inspiration that maybe there exists out there some kind of power greater than me that could actually help me with this situation. And again, I always use with my patients analogies because I think they remember pictures more than they do my words. After a while, they just hear Charlie Brown teacher and they tune out. But to me, it's the analogy of the old Star Trek. Whenever Kirk and the Enterprise were in a desperate situation, he's yelling on the intercom down to Scotty, "Scotty, we need more power." And that's essentially what steps 1 and 2 and 3 are all about. I need more power to beat this thing that is in my life. And step 2 is just that little perhaps, perhaps maybe there exists a power greater than me that can help restore me to my sanity, restore me to whatever happiness I want for myself in my life. And then number 3 says, are you willing to do the deal? It's as simple as that. I love the way my sponsor broke that down. Dr. Burnsbury always said, it's just about making a decision to do your 4-step. All this flowery language in there about turn your life and your will over to higher powers, you understand them, or God. It's like, okay, great, I get the idea, because we need to do a God inventory. I'll explain that in a second. But it essentially comes down to, will you get a journal and start writing? And I love what Scott Lee, my good friend, says. He says, if I see my sponsee at the meeting and he's got his 4-step journal under his arm, he's done his 3rd step. In my book, he's turned it over and he's getting ready to go. But really, it's a metaphor in step 3. When they say turn it over, they mean turn it over to the program. Are you willing to turn over your will and let go of the steering wheel of your life for just a little bit to let this program have a real effect? Or are you going to do a half-assed job while still maintaining total control over everything you do? You got to let go. So that's what they mean by turning your will, life and your will over to a higher power of your own understanding, whatever limited that is. And as part of that process, what we do in our group is we do a God inventory. And we talked about that in the episode on the God stuff. So that person can go through and find out what their baggage is, that they're blocking them from any new ideas on spirituality. We talked at length about this in my group this week, and I'm always astonished at how my patients don't think they have any baggage. And then I get them talking about what happened to them as a child through their church or through their family, and they get angry and they get resentful and they start getting a little bit animated. And I'm like, well, there's some real power there, man. You need to confront that before you approach starting a new path, which is building your own spirituality in the 12 steps. So I don't mean to make it any more complicated than it is. Step 1, I have the problem, I can't fix it. Step 2, I need more power, I need something else to help fix it. Step 3, I am totally willing to let go and do this deal. And in our group, we make our man shake our hand and look us in the eyes and make a promise that he's making a commitment to do this. And if he's not ready, we will send him home to think about it. Because I don't want some half-assed guy that's going to bail on me in step 4. I want a man that's completely committed. He's going to let go and let me have that steering wheel to take him to his better life. And you get that and you're halfway home. If a guy has not let go, you're going to fight him through the rest of the step process. Now we enter into the action phase, which is actually doing work. Step 4 is about writing a personal inventory. Now, the big book, the 12 steps, says a moral inventory. And I really question whether Bill Wilson would change that word today. It's really more important that you do an objective inventory of yourself. What we want to do is not relive the experiences. We want to put them on paper as quickly as possible, like we're making a grocery list. The reason why people relapse and the reason why people fail doing their 4-step is they're re-experiencing the crap they're writing down. And these are resentments, and that's what resentment means, to re-feel and re-experience. We don't want to do that. We want to quickly get them down, close your book, put it away, and that's all you got to do. You're going to write down everything in your life, throughout your entire life, that kind of bugs you. That's all, real simple. What bothers you? And guys will say, nothing bothers me, and then they'll bitch about their girlfriend. Well, nothing bothers me, and then they'll bitch about the White House and government. You get an alcoholic drunk, they'll tell you their resentments. I mean, they're on a bar stool yelling their resentments. And then they come in treatment and say, I don't really think I have any resentments. But you will have more than you know. It will be astonishing to you how much stuff you've been carrying in this trash can strapped to your back. That's what we say in our group, is that we just take things and throw them in there to deal with later because life is busy. I don't want to feel that shit. And then we never get back to it. So it's right there, man. Your conscience, your past, your regrets, your hurts, your heartbreaks. It's all right there. And you just start listing them out. And then we start listing out what's my beef with them. We list out how did it affect me. And then we list out what was my part in that, because we don't want to be victims. I won't go into length about that, but this is a very powerful, scientifically proven process. To me, more effective than psychotherapy. And I'm in the field. Literally, I've seen guys do 20 years of psychotherapy and not have the clarity of what their issues are that I can get a guy in 6 weeks doing his 4-step. After we do our 4-step, we have to take it to what's called the 5th step, where we're going to talk to our sponsor about it or our other sober spiritual supports. If you want to take it to your priest, you want to take it to your spiritual guide. We don't advise family members to not do your 5th step with a family member, but we want somebody who's willing to listen, but also willing to share some of their own dirty stories as well. That is what makes the 5th step different than confession. Everybody has this idea that I'm going to write this moral inventory where I beat myself up, and then I'm going to take all my sins and all my troubles, and I'm going to confess them and maybe be absolved. No, that's church, okay? And that doesn't work. What heals us and what heals everybody I've ever worked with in the steps is knowing that there's someone else who really understands what you went through, has been there themselves and seen the dirt, and they too did their own thing, if not worse than what you did. Strangely enough, that heals you way more than confession. And so during that process, what you want to do is you want to identify these things called your character defects. Character defects are internal flaws that I've acquired over my lifetime that are actually holding me back from being the optimum person I want to be. That's all it is. When we have people write down their character defects in the 5th step, I always have them do the heading, these are the things that defeat me. And character defects, you'd be surprised, they usually originate out of habits we acquired to survive if we were in screwed up situations as kids. You need to understand that. This is where your programming is going to fight you, because in the past this was a good thing. I can give you a perfect example. Based on my screwed up family and all the stuff they left me with inside, when I found drugs and alcohol, to me that was a survival skill that made my life better. It made me survive and not kill myself. So how could this be a bad thing? Well, of course, I got addicted, and over time it started causing problems. Then it becomes a character defect. So anything you're leaning on to cope that is a negative or that is not really helpful or productive for your life, it's actually keeping you from achieving your dreams. You need to hear that. We all think our worst enemies are outside of us, and that's not what spirituality says. They're all right here. They're right here. Those are my worst enemies I'm ever going to face in my life. And so we get our list, and we take that list into 6 and 7. 6 and 7 is where we're going to ask our higher power to come pick up that junk and take it away. I always like the analogy of Fred Sanford from Sanford and Son, and he's going to show up with Lamont in his old pickup. He's going to say, "What do you got, dummy?" Now, hopefully, if you've laid it all on the front lawn in front of your sponsor, you're not going to pick it all back up and walk back in the house with it, which is some people do that after their 5th step, and they make that huge mistake. We want to give it up and say, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to be this person anymore. I'm looking at these defects like I'm a thief, I'm a liar, I cheat, I cut corners. These aren't very flattering qualities. I definitely want to get rid of them. I'm going to ask my higher power to remove them. And through that process, and through the process of finishing steps 8 and 9, stunningly enough, your character defects start to be lifted from you. You may still engage in some of them, you may still struggle with some of them, but the degree of quality, or the degree of intensity, and the degree of how many times you do it is much less and much less as you go along, as you get healthier. So then we left with the amend steps, which is step 8 and 9. And again, it's preparation, execution. So remember, in the 4th step, the preparation was making your journal. Execution and demonstration is going to do your 5th step. In step 6, it says we were entirely ready to have God, meaning we need to do some prayer to make sure we're ready to have our higher power remove these things. And then step 7 says humbly asked him to remove these things. Okay, we're all good to go, ready to go. Step 8, we're going to make our list of people we harmed. It's your 4-step journal. If you're in the program and your sponsor makes you write another list of harms, tell him to read the big book. The big book says we have our list. We made it when we took inventory, which means that every item that's on your 4-step journal, we need to look at whether or not what part you played in that you might have to clean up. You might have to make some amends for. And so we make our little list from that. We look at that, and then we have to do some prayer work to get ready to make that amends. Now, I won't go through the forgiveness process because we talked about that in a separate podcast, but please don't overlook that in the 8th step, there is some work that's going to require you to do some forgiveness of some of these people. Before you go in there to ask for forgiveness for what you did, you need to be clear that you've let go what they did to you. You cannot, it won't work. You cannot be selfish in getting freedom for yourself and not allowing them to be freed as well. And then in the 9th step, we make our demonstrations. I'm going to go out and I'm going to clean up my past. It's not as horrible as you think. I just had a person in my group today talk about her latest amends with her sister, and she was on fire with the juice. This woman was high. And she says, and this was over the weekend, and I still feel great on Thursday. Because this long-standing thing was between her and her sister, and it was breaking her heart. And all it took was for her to lower her ego and go in there and say, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this to you. That's what we try to do in the 9th step. We don't grovel. We don't say, I'm so sorry. No, we say, hey, man, I did you wrong, and I'm here to make it right. And I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you, I mean to make this right. I ain't shying away from my responsibility, even if it takes me 20 years to pay this back. I am going to make this right with you. And then we allow them a chance to share their stuff and get free as well. And ideally, What happened in my friend's case this morning, her and her sister found a piece where she said they were hugging and had tears. And what a wonderful gift, folks. You have no understanding what you're carrying with these negative links to your past that you've not cleaned up. We call it unfinished business. You have no idea how it's holding you down in your happiness. And this gift we get that before we die, we get to clean up all of our mistakes. I think that's the greatest gift on earth. I'm not going to have to take my karma for everything I did as a junkie into my next lifetime. I've made my amends. There is nobody looking for me today. There is nobody showing up at my doorstep with a gun saying, hey, you owe me money. That's all taken care of. And that's what we want to get you to, is that state of freedom, so that you're cleaned out from the inside out, which is what the 12 steps do. It's an enema for the soul. It will eliminate all that garbage you've acquired over the years, so you have a fresh new container to start with, okay? And then, of course, we enter into the maintenance phase, which is continue to take inventory, keep praying and doing meditation. Word out to all my alcoholic addict friends out there, most addicts and alcoholics are not meditating. And you're making it much more complicated than it needs to be. I'm going to challenge you to take 5 minutes a day from here on out for the next year and see how it changes your life. That's how little an investment it takes for a great payoff, for you to be more calm, to have more of a longer fuse, to not lose your brain over stupid small stuff. Just take some time to be quiet. Just be still. Listen to some music. Relax. Look at the grass. It's astonishing how powerful that tool is. And then step 12, we have to go out and help others. Now that I'm healed, I want to help others be healed. And what a wonderful gift. I mean, this is what our world is lacking. We live in the West where we are so greedy and so self-centered with consumerism and about what I can get out of life. I ain't got time to think about helping you. Oh, I mean, I go down, I serve lunch at Christmas at the homeless shelter. No, man. In our program, I'm going to take on somebody and show them how to do the work. Take them through it. And my friend Dan here will tell you, this is the greatest gift. And we always say, what's the greatest gift about recovery? But this is one of them, is to watch another person grow and just emerge out of this dark shell of a person into this brand new existence. And you get to be a part of that. It's miracle work. And then you stay sober and clean and healthy the rest of your life, just working these tools the best you can the rest of your life. If stuff comes up, you do your inventory, talk to your sponsor, make amends. It's real simple stuff, right? So, but what I want to emphasize the most about this is that I, again, have not found any religious practice, nor have I found any psychological therapeutic practice that gets the same results as much, as strongly, and in such a short time as these 12 steps do. Ideally, it should take 4 to 6 months. And if you all are new and you're running into a sponsor out there saying, whoa, take your time, you got all the time in the world to do your steps, he's going to kill you. Run away from that son of a bitch. I mean that sincerely. Ask him if he was in jail, if he wanted to hear the words, wait. This is an emergency, 4-alarm fire in your life, and a guy's telling you, wait? No, I want to go now. And I love a guy that's motivated like that. I'll get him through in 4 months, baby. And he's coming to me telling me his whole life is better. He's sleeping back in the big bed with his wife. His kids love him now. They're not running away from him. His job gave him a freaking promotion. And you just sit there and smile. And what it does, let me summarize. And you're sitting there going, how does it work again? What is blocking me from plugging into this universal power? I don't call it God anymore. We have to refer to it and use that word. But it's this energy. What's blocking me from plugging into that is all my stuff. My past, my programming, my ego, my convictions, and all that is keeping me from feeling that there's anything there. So you can tell me all day long about spirituality, and I'm sitting there going, bounce off my chest, bounce off my chest. I think you're full of crap, blah, blah, blah. But when we clean you out from the inside, that's why I say a spiritual enema, you can start to experience that power on a level you never could before. You will have moments of your day. A good friend of mine that's maybe very close to me in proximity at this moment was talking about crying at Disney movies and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's real shit. That's called growth. That's nothing to be embarrassed about. That's the pinnacle of cleaning yourself out, that you can have an experience of life. And what's the opposite of that, folks? Most of our friends go to the mall, go to the DMV. They're walking around like zombies. They're not even half alive. I won't even give them that anymore. I used to say people are half alive. I don't even think they're half alive anymore. Should have seen it on the way to traffic, on the way to this podcast. People were nearly killing each other. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just, we like to say that we've been taken out of the matrix, but that's a tired old phrase. And I hear some comedians make fun of that. But it is a complete drastic transformation that you have no idea how good your life could be. So let me end on this phase, and then Dan and I will discuss a little bit because I want to get his experience in here, and he's seen the miracle work of these steps. When these steps first came around, God has a great sense of humor. God gave this miracle tool to the most scorned, most shunned, most rejected children he has, the alcoholics and the addicts. So here you go, guys. This is going to be the greatest gift I'm going to give humanity, and maybe even the gift that saves humanity. In 1935, I'm going to give it to you guys. And they took it. Why? Because they were desperate, and there was a wisdom to God's wisdom, man. That guy knew normal people would not be hurting enough to do this work. They wouldn't be driven. They wouldn't have that fire on their ass to do this work. But you give me a guy like Dan that's facing a 20-year sentence, that guy will listen. That guy will take some suggestions, right?
Yes.
So we had addicts and alcoholics. Alcoholics first, and then the first addict showed up at an AA meeting, and they freaked out. He's going to ruin it. He's going to get us all drunk. He doesn't belong here, because back in the day, drugs were way worse than they are now in terms of taboo. And, one of them said, "What would the master do?" And this is before they had the "What would Jesus do?" bumper stickers. And they knew they couldn't turn this person out because they needed help. So they taught NA, Narcotics Anonymous, the 12 steps. Then we had Gamblers Anonymous come along. Then we had Sexaholics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous. It's basic things that people could say, well, I could see those are kind of addictions, so I could see how they work. But then we had things like Cigarettes Anonymous. How about Depression Anonymous? How about Bipolar Anonymous? How about Schizophrenics Anonymous? What? Schizophrenics can get benefit from the 12 steps? You bet your butt they can. If they're on their meds and they're stable, you can work with them on the 12 steps. I have. But every other group that could need this program, and literally if you look up on the internet, I've lost count, it's over 100, maybe even 200 of different groups that use this all over the world. Any variety of problem you have, there's a group for you to go to and say, I'm one of you guys, I need to work my steps, right? But what we have not had so far is a group for normal people. Normal people are a little bit harder to diagnose because they might have a little overeating, they might have a little over shopping, but they're not full blown. Right? So they don't want to go to a meeting and say, I'm an addict or I'm an overeater, because it feels like they're lying if they're not fully being honest about the degree of their problem. So our idea is, I swear to God, I heard this at almost the first meeting I went to in Alcoholics Anonymous in 1983. I heard the phrase, I wish my family and friends had these tools. And I have heard that in so many meetings over 40 years. I wish I had $1 for every time. I'd be a very rich man. And yet I've not seen anybody do a damn thing to try and spread that message. Maybe there are. Maybe there are other pockets out there we don't know about. But not in my travels. Never encountered that. All I've seen is people say, well, I'm glad I got mine. But they're not doing anything to carry it to anybody else. So here in Louisville, we have started groups for people. And that is going to be the basis of this podcast, this name. We're in the process of changing the name to I Am One Too. And these are groups that will be available to anybody to come learn about the 12-step toolkit. And it's so much wider than the 12 steps. You go to any meeting, you've got life experiences, you've got proven tools that work. And you could come to me and say, I've got this problem. I say, here's the tool, try this. This screwdriver works really good in this situation. Or this hammer is great in here, try that one. And it's amazing, this toolkit that we have. It's unlimited. I've never found a situation that somebody's brought to a meeting that we did not have a tool for. And I want to share that with the world. And I believe that's what's going to heal us. Right now, what you're seeing happening in our world is people don't have any tools. Next time you're out and you're saying, why are people so sick? Why are they acting so crazy? Tell yourself they don't have any tools but what we're teaching them in America. What are we teaching them in America? Consumerism, division, separateness, and discrimination, and fear. That's what we're getting off the TV every day. Those aren't any great tools. So hang in there. We got the book coming, which will be a book just for you guys, the normal people that are watching this. It's also for addicts and alcoholics that want to go deeper maybe than just the book, the big book. And I'm committed to this. I've been committed to this. I'm not going to give up. And I believe that this is the way. As my good friend likes to say, this is the way from the Mandalorian. Again, nothing else that's as easy to do can do it this quickly, changes a person so much. I'll end on this. Take a down-and-out street junkie who's been shooting people to get his fix. And you can take that man, put him through this process, and if he stays with it and works these principles in all of his affairs, he now owns a home worth several $100,000. He now has a job that pays crazy money. He now has a swimming pool in the backyard. He has a wife he loves. His kids love him. He has 3 or 4 dogs, 4 birds, I lost count. And this is one of my sponsees. When I met this man, he's crawling into my car to do work. Just a junkie, sniveling junkie, living on the streets. How can anything change something that dramatically? And it can work for anybody, not just addicts and alcoholics. I've seen it. Since we've been running these groups, we have taken normal people through and they get the same results. So hang in there. We want to bring this to everybody. But in the meantime, just look them up. Listen to some YouTube videos about the 12 steps. Some of it's misinformation, but some of it's really good. And have fun checking it out, I'm telling you. Or just go to a meeting. If you want to go to a meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous has these things called open meetings, which means anybody can walk in off the street. If it's a closed meeting, that's for alcoholics only. They want it to be private. But open meetings are meant to share the message so other people can learn and know what alcoholism is about. So again, they'll focus on alcoholism at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. But when you introduce yourself and they're going around, just say, I'm a visitor. That's it. I've had people come in and say they were a nursing student, or I'm a family member, or I'm a supporter. So again, as you can tell, I have a passion for this. And I'm going to let my friend Dan take over a little bit because he's got just as strong a passion as I do. Maybe mine's a little bit more. I don't know. What do you think, Dan, about these beautiful tools called the 12 steps?
Well, first off, great job with that summary. That is too cool.
It's not easy, man. I'm sitting over here scrambling. What do I tell him? What do I not tell him?
Yeah, but that was perfect.
Thank you, sir.
I like the old joke. I'd heard it a long time ago that whatever it was in the 2nd or 3rd grade, whatever day it was that they were passing out the handbook on how to do life, that I must have been absent that day because I didn't get the rules. And that was hard for my ego to admit to, that I really had no freaking idea what I was doing, period. It felt like I was chasing my shadow all the time and watching other people to see what they were doing so that I would know what to do. And I remember, another thing where I was trained that way as a kid, that, I looked at my peers and to figure out what I was going to do next. If they went to this room, well, I would follow them in there. And the 12 Steps has given me a guidebook on how to do life in a pretty daggone successful way. And by success, I just always try to put that caveat out that I don't mean money. That's come with it too, but that's not what I mean. I mean a life of happiness, happy, joyous, and free. The terms in the big book are all over about these, what the wheel will feel like. And the most fulfilling thing that I do in my life today is take a man through these steps. It's the most fulfilling thing that I have in my life. And as you explained, to watch somebody come in hurting, got a big book says problems piled up so deep they could hardly even begin to think they can solve them all. And, down the road, here they are, things are turned the corner on them. They have transformed their lives. And, I like to look at it as a human washing machine. It's automatic. Another guy said to me that he could guarantee me that if I work these 12 steps and practice these principles in my daily life, that my life would get better. And he said probably much better. And I throw that guarantee out all the time today because I know it. And you were talking about that scientific method. Besides, I looked on the internet to see how many AA groups there were. It's not really giving me an answer.
How many 12-step groups?
How many 12-step groups there are? It did say that there's 129,790 AA groups in the
Holy
world.
moly.
129,800 AA groups and over 2 million active members. And I'll bet you that's I wouldn't be surprised if that's not low.
My favorite story of that is when I was working with the soldiers and they told me they were out on tour walking through Kabul and the place is, rubble. And they looked up and there was a sign with a circle and a triangle. And the dude said, there's an AA meeting here. What the hell?
Yeah. In a country that doesn't do alcohol.
I know. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. But And I've run my own scientific method. I've had the opportunity to sponsor quite a few men in the time that I've been around, just going on 10 years. And that's what really brought it home to me, is watching it work in other people, that you personally had a hand in when you got them through these steps. And we have a very effective, I think maybe I go so far as to say, well, I won't, it's the most effective recipe that I know of, because you can bend to 12 steps and do a lot of different things with them, really, because they're not as like legalistic as one might think. The basic principles behind them, and the fundamentals, I think you have to stick with. But we have a recipe that just works great, and I'm watching guys. They go through it. They're doubtful with me. I tell them these promises kind of stuff, and not the promises that are in the book. The stuff like, this will get better. This problem will resolve itself. Your relationship with your wife can be restored. Don't know if it will be, but it can be. And I see that happen more times than not. And, they're looking at you like you're full of shit. And just the same way that I looked at you when I was new and you were telling me these things, I wasn't about to say it out loud, but my brain in there was going, yeah. But like you said, I was desperate enough, and I did the work, and the end result was nothing short of miraculous. He talked about that 6 to 20 year prison term. I didn't do a day in jail.
That's astounding.
I come out of that so transformed that when I look back, I hardly recognize the man that I was. It seems like maybe it was some kind of dream or a movie I watched or something. It's not even attached to me and weighing on me at all. I've done some pretty terrible stuff, and this program and this the process you just outlined. The better way, I think, that I say, none of that stuff weighs anything anymore. It's still there, but it doesn't weigh on me. It doesn't weigh a thing anymore. And the only time that I get it out really nowadays is to help the next guy with here's where I was at. Here's the kind of things that I did. And these 12 steps, which I'm trying to present to you, will work for you too. There's a lot of myths. We think one of the big ones is you think, okay, I see our home group, the Spiritual Underground, we got 50 guys in here, and they look really happy, and they come in hugging each other and everything, but that can't happen for me. I can see it maybe looking like it's happening for these guys, but it can't happen for me.
I'm different.
And I am different, and you're wrong, because it can happen for you if you'll just do the work. And it's like you said, man, in 4 to 6 months, and of course that's the recipe I was taught. I talked to a man this morning, and he had said his sponsor, he told him that he was fine if it took a year or two to get through this work. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, if that's your attitude, you got the wrong sponsor. You need to start finding another sponsor, because we're not going to wait a year or two to get through this.
And the other reason why is we need to get you well so you can help save some lives. How selfish is it to say you're going to wait around to get well while there's people dying that need your help?
And that was the exact response is what the guy gave it to.
That's
but
awesome.
He's also got a very, very good lineage of sponsorship behind him.
So let me emphasize what you were saying, though, about, it's lessened from the past. It's gone for me in terms of, I think what bedevils human beings on suffering is that ego hit, that it was personal. You know what I mean? Like, my dad was personally trying to ruin my life now I know on a logical level, my brain can say that doesn't make sense, but that's how my ego feels. It's like, this is personal and I'm not letting it go. But as the result of doing this work, and this is more than any of the psychotherapy I did, more than all the spiritual groups I went to and the retreats, this last time through the steps with the methodology we use made it so it feels like it happened to somebody else. It's no longer personal in any way, shape, or form. I can see my dad in an afterlife and not run in the other direction. I can see him and feel pity for him, compassion. And more than I ever could. I could never have any compassion for his alcoholism before. I'm different, I'm an addict, right? But still, just that feeling that it happened to somebody else that's completely gone, that's the ideal outcome of the steps.
Yeah, I am not attached to those things.
Detachment, that's a good word.
Yeah, anymore. And we could sit here all night long and talk about the great things that have happened as a result of this, and still people will shake their head and go, and will reject it. We see it on a, just in our home group on a weekly basis of people that come in and they've got a wall up and they're not going to allow this program to help them. It's a little bit like one of the things, we said detachment. They're attached to their conundrum and won't let it go. And as you said earlier, that's really, this thing could probably be renamed Let It Go, because it detaches you from this stuff. And it is so comforting to be living under a 12-step philosophy, to know that I have this awesome fellowship of men around me, and women too, that are truly available to assist me in whatever I might need assistance with. And to know that any problem that I come up against, and that's happened in my life, when any problem I've come up against, this has a way through it. I was wanting to say solve it. It doesn't necessarily solve my problems, but it does give me a path through them that I can, that ends up, turning out way better than anything that I could have guessed might be the outcome of this particular thing. So much so is that when I do run into a problem, I'm a little bit optimistic about like what kind of cool thing's going to be on the backside of this problem. We're going to go through it, and I'll learn why I had to go through it once we get through it. And,
my old sponsor, Bob J., you always take one or two top treasures from each person that you're under their tutelage. Of course, with Burns, I got several, but the one thing I'll never forget he said is, Christopher, we can't guarantee that it will be okay because it is in the two last letters of the word shit, and life is going to do what life's going to do. But what we can absolutely ironclad 100% guarantee that if you're working these tools, you will be okay. That's what you're saying, is that the stuff will still hit the fan, the planes will hit the towers in New York, the economy will crash. But if you stay in this zone, this bubble, working these tools, something carries you through that disaster, that calamity, and you come out smelling like a rose going, I don't know, everybody's talking about being out of work. I got plenty of work. I've seen it time and time again.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I know that that's the comforting feeling, to know that no matter what I'm running up against, that I'm going to be okay.
Provided I'm doing my work and I'm staying close to my higher power. That's the condition in the big book.
Yep.
Do his work well and stay in touch with your higher power.
And another one of the great things about the 12 steps is along with that guarantee of your life's going to get better, I can guarantee you this too. It ain't going to hurt you. You're not going to have any kind of side effects. You're not going to end up with anything. There's no harm available in trying this.
Versus psychotherapies can harm you. Treatments can harm you. Medications can harm you. There's all kinds of side effects. So.
Right.
Plus, the other thing I always harp on is it's free. It's not like we're sitting here saying send $6.99 for my CD set, and at the bottom of the screen it says your results may vary. This is not an infomercial. This is literally free. And I think, I jokingly say this, but sometimes I think there's truth to it. If we charged $10 to get in an AA meeting, I think we'd have more attendance.
Yeah.
People do not value stuff in America if it's not a money attached to it. If it's free, I'll go to it when I feel like it. It's always going to be there. Not necessarily.
Yep. The old dollar in the hat at a meeting kind of thing. I overpay today because of I can't give AA enough money to pay back what I have been given. And I do what I can to support it. And today, the majority of my life's energy goes towards something recovery related. This podcast, my other podcast, sponsoring a guy, in meetings, talking to my buddies. That's just what my life is today. And I won't, the upside is so big. There's nowhere, if it's working, keep doing it, right?
I do want to pick your brain on one element I don't want us to miss, because you yourself have had the experience of sponsoring people that are so-called normal.
Yeah.
Through this work, and I have too. And we were at first concerned, and I think it was valid, that would they have the fire under their butt to really do all the work? Would they have that level of desperation for change? And what we found is just get them in the work and just take them to the next part. Let's just do your first column and your 4-step. Let's do your second column. Keep them excited, inspire them. And I know you've seen that, revolutionary changes in the lives of normal people.
Yeah.
Better relationship with their children, more peace in their heart, less anxiety. Their trauma is healed. The one lady you sponsored, the trauma is dramatically better, right?
Yep. And it works for whatever you got. My one example I like to talk about is I had a father who had rage issues. And the real problem with it is that it always, and he was able to be truthful with me and tell me about it because he wasn't an alcoholic, and we had to kind of like put something else in the bucket for like, okay, we're powerless against this. You know, we say in AA we're powerless over alcohol. Well, he was powerless over his rage, and we put that in the bucket, and he would, it was coming out sideways on his kids, and that was killing him. I mean, like, you know, like we go out and get all drunk last night, and we wake up in the morning and we're going, God damn, what did I do to myself? Oh man. He's yelling at his kids and then walking off and thinking, why can't I control this, you know? And he worked this program, and it fixed it, for lack of a better term. It doesn't happen anymore. And that, you know, proof positive. And I've sponsored a couple people who were just plain old not happy with their lives. We always say, you know, do you think there's room for some better in your life? And no human being can hardly say that there's no room for any better in their life. And they walk through this and work this program. And, you know, the one thing that I notice is, like, as an alcoholic, the program teaches me that I need to stay in the program to keep my sobriety, keep my recovery. And I've seen that, you know, if I don't stay attached to my recovery program, there's a real good chance that it's not going to be around much longer. But those people, as we say, normal people, they go off to live happily ever after. And I'm still in contact with all of them at some level. You know, I hear from them on occasion, and they're live, and I watch them on Facebook. Of course, that's not a very good, but I actually can see that through Facebook, that there's things in there. I can see it in their eyes, and I can see the pictures of them, and I can tell that they're doing okay. So the one thing about that is that I've noticed the normal people won't hang around for the long haul and not give it back to others, which is again, you're lack of another analogy, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, well, it's one of our steps. You didn't do the full program.
Yeah, right.
And that people need to understand that scientific basis is that it's a prescription. So if you get a prescription for antibiotics and the thing says take the full amount over the full 10 days, even if you feel better, otherwise you're going to be sick again. Well, that's what happens. Guys feel better after their fifth step, or maybe after a couple of amends, or they never go on to sponsor somebody, and they didn't do the full prescription, and they wonder why it failed. So I'm very dubious for everyone out there in cyberland when you see varying results about whether AA is successful. First of all, it's been well studied. It's very successful, especially the support element of a community. However, very few people at meetings are actually doing the full 12 steps. I'm just going to tell you that truth. I've seen this over 40 years. You can go up to anybody in a meeting and put them on a lie detector. Are you really sponsoring people? Are you really praying and meditating? And they're going to be like, well, and not that you have to be perfect, not by any means. But if you're going to skimp, you won't get the full version of happy, joyous, and free. That's all I can say. And Dan is right. Sponsoring other guys, you have no idea what you're missing to just be a part of that journey. It'll give you hope for humanity. It will give you hope for life. That's the only place I see God. I turn on the TV, I don't see God. I listen to people at work, I don't see God. But I watch my guy change right before my eyes, and that's a power I can't explain. And I'm sitting here going, that is impossible that my guy with 63 felonies has just been made off paper by the governor of Kentucky, and there is no record of him running over cops with his car. How does that happen? I've seen it. Same as the Hells Angels hitman from California I sponsored. Just you sit there and you shake your head. This isn't supposed to work. This guy should be killing me. And it just does.
Yep.
So as you all can tell, we have a passion for this, and we want to share it with everybody. That's the goal of this podcast. It's the goal of spreading this word. And I want you all to take heart out there. This is available to you, and we're going to make it as easy as possible. Come this fall, we'll have a book designed just for the average folks, including anybody else who wants to go deeper, the I Am 1-2 book. And we're going to open up that network and hopefully get more meetings. We have 3 meetings in Louisville right now. The women's meeting is kicking butt and extremely successful. The Sunday meeting in person, the Misfits group, fabulous work, guys. Shout out to you all. You have an amazing, you walk in that room and you feel the love, especially on birthday day, right? So please join us, as my good friend says. Just join us. Anything else you want to say about the steps there, Dan?
Oh, there's a million things, man. But I could never stop talking about it. I will say, and just to double up on what you said, and the way I like to say it is, if you want the full dose of this, you can't do it a la carte. You have to follow the process in order and do them all. And the principles that are that are taught there. In order to have the full dose of this, if you don't want the full dose of it, then skip some stuff. But if you want the full dose, and I know that I have received it, I know that Christopher has received it, I know that a number of the guys I sponsor have received it. They're doing the full dose, and they're continuing to use these principles in their everyday life and passing it on to the next guy. You do that, and you get the full dose, and you won't have any reason. It won't make sense to you to skip anything.
Yeah, you're just cheating yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to give one last tool for people. I can feel people out there that some of them might be saying, what do I do then? Where do I get started? So I'm going to help you. This is easy. I want you to spend a week or two in reflection on whatever issue it is that's bothering you. Maybe you have a daughter that's on heroin and you can't let it go. You're codependent and getting caught up in it. Maybe you have a job that you're giving too much to and you know it's affecting your relationship with your children. Whatever your issue is that you're tired of trying to fix by yourself, I want you to go on some long walks. I want you to meditate and reflect. Get quiet, sit with it, feel it, really get honest with yourself. Can I stop this? Can I fix this on my own? Am I ready for something new? Am I ready to do something different? Okay? Then after that, if you say, yes, I really am interested in seeing what this pathway has to offer, I'm going to challenge you to go to a meeting. You can easiest place to go to a meeting is Al-Anon. Al-Anon is for the friends and families of addicts and alcoholics, and if you know anybody in your life that has an issue with addiction, you are welcome at an Al-Anon meeting, and they will teach you relationship skills. They will teach you boundary tools. They will teach you how to take care of yourself. They do not sit around meetings at Al-Anon and talk about the drunk. They talk about how are you doing, what's going on in your life, and you will be amazed. There's a group right down the street from you in a church, I guarantee it. Look up alanon.org, A-L-A-N-O-N, alanon.org, and you will be welcome. I don't care if it's your neighbor that's a drunk. I don't care if it's your coworker that has issues with pills. You are welcome. So thanks for being with us with that, and really appreciate your all's attention. And we will keep juicing on them as long as you'll tolerate us. But I know it's made my life exponentially better, and I just want everybody else's to have a better experience of this thing called life. So thanks for listening. All right, now we're going to head into our question portion of the program. And as we said, we'd like to hear from you. Anything in your life that you would like some clarifying information, some tools, some feedback, we are here to help you. So send your questions to iam12recovery@gmail.com, iam12recovery@gmail. We don't identify you. I don't even know the people, no names on this, who wrote these. All right, we have two questions for today. First question is, hey guys, been listening to the podcast and really appreciate everything you're doing. Been a great help. I have been in recovery for some time, and I have watched other people sponsor, and it seems like many people have different opinions on this one issue. So I'd like to ask you for clarification. How come they're saying in the program that a person should avoid relationships and or sexual encounters / interactions in their first year of recovery? What is the benefit of that, and how come there are different opinions about whether they should do that or what the time frame is on that? This is an excellent question because every newcomer that's coming in is thinking, when can I have sex? No. And the old joke in the program that I heard from the old timer was, they're not having sex, they don't want you having sex. That's why they make the newcomers not have sex. No, that's not why they do that. So there are so many distractions in this world. The number one distraction that most people are going to run into is work. And then they'll come into the meeting one night and say, I have a lot going on. And then the minute they say that, if their sponsor doesn't pull them back in line and say, you've got to save your life before you have too much going on, then they've got their priorities out of whack and they'll slowly drift out the door. Well, there is nothing greater for a distraction than a new piece of tail. That romance, that infatuation period, that is a drug. Love is a drug. It's like unlike anything on earth. So if the option comes down to, man, I need to get my 4-step done. I got to meet my sponsor tomorrow night. Or I can call up Linda and, which one do you think a newcomer is going to take? So they're begging the newcomer, make this commitment to yourself, not out of suffering, but make this commitment that for now we are going to work on you and just you. And I can promise you that if you make this commitment, you're going to make a much better choice in terms of your quality of relationship down the road. You will not be bringing these people that you were calling psychos and whores and no good men and all that stuff you've been saying about all your past relationships. We will heal that stuff in the 12 steps, and you will demand a better quality of partner. So that's number one. We don't want the distraction, and that you will have better quality down the road. The other facet of this is, let me let my brain catch up to my thoughts here. I don't put a time frame of a year on it. What I want to do is I want to motivate my guy to do his work. So I took that and I changed it to, let's get your 12 steps done. And for us in our group, it means you're in your 9th step and you have done a few amends. And we've got you established on a routine where you're knocking your 9th step amends out. And then I'm going to cut them loose and I'm going to say, now go out and multiply and prosper and have a great time. And the surprising thing is he finds himself slowing down at that point and valuing himself and not just running to the next sweet thing that raises its skirt at him. He's actually valuing his own feelings and what he wants out of a relationship. Plus, he has more clarity from doing the 12 steps of what his values are. Remember, when we're drug addicts and alcoholics, we are very confused because I'm Mr. Church on Sunday morning and I'm Mr. Horror on Saturday night. You know, I've got that Professor Clump buddy love thing from the Nutty Professor, and the two sides of that character are polar apart from each other. So what we want to do is bring it back to that central core part of you, and then you will be much happier in the quality of your relationship. I don't care if a person wants to use the 1 year mark. That's their choice. Everybody has the right to sponsor their guys how they see fit. The only one I really regret is when I hear a guy say, well, I'm not going to tell a guy how to run his life. That's kind of what they're hiring you to do, bro. They don't have a brain that's working. Their brain is broke, and they need you with your sound mind to point out these pitfalls. So if you don't do that, I feel like you're not doing your job as a sponsor. And I have direct experience with this. And that's why I'll take my guy to and say, look, man, I made a mistake. I was messing with a married woman in my early recovery. I was 2 months sober. Barely had my sponsor, and I knew it was wrong. I knew I was in trouble. This woman had kids. She had a husband. I felt horrible. I knew this wasn't right, but I'm lonely. I'm in a city. I don't know anybody. I'm in early recovery. I'm hurting, you know. I could justify this all which ways of Sunday, but my soul was saying, you know, you're fucking up. And I did the right thing. I told my sponsor. Now, I took a minute to tell him. I think it was a few weeks, but, you know. But I told him, and he basically said, well, I don't think you can stay sober doing that behavior, and I'm not going to sponsor you if you're going to do that behavior, so make a choice. And that saved my life. I need to be very clear about that. That man being firm about his standards saved my life. So rethink that. Talk to your sponsor if you're not currently requiring your babies to do that. Please, female sponsors as well, please help your ladies stop getting these degenerates in their life that are beating them up and domestic violence and everything. They need a higher quality of partner, and they can't do it on their own. They're powerless. That's why they're coming to you. Please have a backbone and say, these are my standards. If you don't like my standards, there's a guy right over here you can work with. I think I have good stuff, though. You might want to think twice before you jump to this other guy. So, Dan, I know you've adopted that philosophy, and I don't ever tell you how to sponsor your guys. How do you feel about this topic of the limiting new relationships in recovery?
I am totally on board with not until we get done with the work. I think that's a motivator. And, you know, as we were saying earlier, you're going to be a different man or woman when you're done with this work. And if you hook up with somebody now, there's two kind of aspects of it. They may not like the new guy, and we have another. I think a AA kind of 12-step recovery kind of thing is my picker was broke. Mm-hmm. I was not picking quality partners. So between the motivation on the timeline and the amount that you're going to change. And, you know, this is a blip in your life. This little 4 to 6 months is a blip. You know, if you can't turn it off for just a little bit, you know, well, I'll just stop there.
Well, you have options. And even in the early 80s, Dan, these old timers were telling us straight, and I'm just going to be hardcore about it. Hey, man, you got a good right hand, don't you? Come on, what's the big deal? We're asking you just to not get involved with somebody. That's all.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing of this, doing this work is like is a demonstration to higher power that you really mean it. And I find that if you're focused on that, your recovery shows when you're when you're through with the work. If you just do this like some kind of side hustle where you're not really, it's not the primary thing in your life right now, well, you're going to get some kind of side hustle results out of it. It's just that. And I will say, one of my favorite speakers, Bob Earl, says, they tell them not to get in relationships. I tell my guys to get in a relationship. Then they're going to have a whole lot of stuff to call their sponsor about. But
I think he's doing that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, I do too.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's Bob Earl with 2 L's, Earll. If you're in AA or NA, please look him up. He's one of our genius angels that's no longer with us. So, and I'm sure your guys have told you later, just like they did me, that really helped me to not have that extra baggage to deal with.
Yep.
So
It's a huge distraction, and you're trying to find your true self through this. That's one of the aims in what 12-Step promises is you're going to find your true self. And I don't care who you are. When you're trying to impress her, you're putting on a mask, and that just muddies the water. Here you are distracting that mission.
Mm-hmm. And I've never seen it work. There was one couple that got married in their first year, and for a while they were sober. Now they're smoking pot, and it seemed to be working. So I could never say it's never worked.
Yeah.
But now I can. I've never seen it work.
I have not witnessed it work.
So it may work for a time, but if you're going to risk it when it comes to risking your life, I wouldn't suggest it. So, all right. So summary. Sponsors, get a backbone out there. Please warn your guys and your gals of the truths of recovery. It's not easy. Very few of us are going to make it, man. Please up their odds by having some standards you're going to hold them to. All right, second question for today. Hello, my question is, you know how you get down the road of recovery a little bit, and it seems harder and harder to relate to the newcomer. And I think that just happens organically. I'm looking for some tools to deal with this, sort of stay in the trenches. I get all that stuff, the normal stuff, when a new guy comes in the door, I want to stay relatable to him. And what are the best ways and or what tools can I use to make sure that I stay relatable? Because the most important thing to me is the new guy coming into the room. That is excellent. What a great question. So I'm in a very unique position because I'm getting fresh fish every day off the streets, and I am constantly learning new lingo, new slang, new drugs as they come down the pipeline. And I think it shocks my patients to have this old guy with white hair use the language that they're familiar with, especially the younger kids nowadays. But, in my mind, addiction never changes. It's been the same. Bill Wilson and the guys were doing crazy, whoring, dirty-ass behaviors in the 30s. We would put them on a pedestal, but they were just drunks. And all the way back to Falstaff in Shakespeare's day in literature. And addiction doesn't really change. The terms, the players, the drugs, they might change a little bit, but the suffering is universal. So I'm going to tie this into the other question I get a lot as a sponsor, and that is, I was an alcoholic, can I sponsor a guy that was on heroin? Or I was a pothead, and can I sponsor a guy that does coke? And I'm like, dude, it's not about teaching them how to be a better drug addict. You're not going to teach them how to slam their dope in a more effective fashion in a different vein. You're trying to teach them the solution. And all you need to do that is to share your experience. You have experience with suffering. You have experience with pain. You have experience with humiliation and defeat and having people spit on you and scorn you. That's the thing my guy's going to relate to, not whether or not I really understand what it's like to be on Molly. I don't. I'm glad I didn't have that experience because I think I would have liked it too much. But again, I don't know if that's really necessary for relatable. So stay with me. I'll flesh this out. So relatable in the sense is, can I look my guy in the eye and tell him that I've honestly been where he's at right now? I think I want to reach my guy when he comes in the door with what's going on in your life. Is your job at risk? And I can tell him I didn't have a job in recovery. Is your money at risk? And I can tell him I didn't have a penny in my pocket. And that's literally true. I was shipped to Minnesota without a credit card, without a penny in my pocket. Is your housing situation at risk? And I was in a halfway house. And all those little aspects of my early recovery are way more valuable in hooking my guy. Because he's going through that right now, not what he went through 2 weeks ago or whatever. I don't personally have the experience of legal charges, but then again, I have the experience of so many sponsees, including the fellow I talked about earlier with 63 felonies, who have really educated me on what it's like to be in prison. I can tell you things like, and then if he's been in prison, he'll say, oh, you kind of do know about it. But my guy told me, you want to know? He said, dog, you know what the worst part of prison is? And I said, what is it, man? Because I imagine there's many worse things myself. And he said, back pain and hemorrhoids. And I said, I never would have thought of that. Why is that? Ain't no soft place to sit. Everything's hard, man. You're sitting on concrete, wood, metal. And I was like, that makes total sense. Back pain and hemorrhoids. I would have thought it would have been the noise. I would have thought about raping in the showers. That was his opinion. But when I say that to my convicts, they laugh and they're like, hey, man, I got some hemorrhoids. I understand. So if you just hook them on one aspect, and always be honest, never try to represent yourself as being an expert in a field you're not. Just be in your experience and try to avoid phrases. I hear people in meetings will say things like, I don't really relate to that, but the minute you say, I don't really relate to that, you're making them feel different. You are making them feel ostracized in a way. You're stigmatizing them. You're putting them out there and say, well, I never really did that. Well, don't do that. Find something that's similar to it that you did. You were in a car wreck where you flipped your car because you were drunk. Well, maybe I was in a car wreck where I got hit by a train. That's a little joke for my friend. Again, it's similar but different. So try to find the similarities and don't emphasize the differences. Now, as far as relatability in terms of experience, and I'll get Dan in here on this, I'm a big fan. Again, I'm fortunate. I don't have to do this anymore. I'm dealing with new fresh fish every day. So I'm getting the gutter, dirty, nasty, bile, ugly part of this disease every morning. And I smile and say, welcome to group. But go to the healing place here in town. Go to meetings in your downtown area. Go to the ones that ask around, say, where are the hardcore groups? Where are the groups where the real guys are coming in off the street and they're parking their shopping cart outside in the parking lot? Seriously, go to some of those to not lose touch so that you can go home and hug your pillow closer and say, thank God I have these tools. And that's what I used to do back in the day before I got in this field. And if you're sponsoring hardcore guys, get them on board to go with you. It's fun to get a whole group. Say, hey, man, we haven't been down the healing place. Let's go juice bomb the healing place meeting. And that's what we call it in my group. When a group was 10 and 20 people show up out of nowhere, and they're like, who are all these guys? We're just here to juice bomb the meeting. But I love the passion. That's what, most of all from this question, I love the passion. I can tell you really care about people, that you're even thinking about this question about how I can stay more relatable to the new guy. I don't think an average person would even consider that. So that's juice right there. Dan, what do you think about this, about staying relatable to the new guy coming in?
You know, one of the things that pops in my head is being relatable, like as in, one thing I struggle with is my tolerance for the new guy. I constantly have to practice going, he's sick. He's just new. He's just sick. Because there's a piece of me that wants to reject that perfectly good human being on the fact that they're just not down the path as far as I am. And I constantly have to redirect myself there. I struggle with it more than again, we talked about this in other ones. I am gentle with myself today. But I struggle with it more than I want to. And, and I guess now that I'm saying it out loud, 6 and 7 are a good tool for steps 6 and 7 are a good tool for letting go of something that is not serving you. You'd said something about taking I don't think it slipped out that way exactly, but you said take your if you've got taking people to these low bottom meetings, it's just a phrase we use. Frankly, our meeting attracts not so low bottom people. We really don't have the lows. Now and again there are, and I really don't even like to put it on a scale. I don't even like to talk about it.
It's hard because we do get the halfway houses come in sometimes.
Yeah, but I just also don't like to label that because it doesn't really make a difference.
No, it doesn't.
But what I do like to do is take my high bottom guys down to the healing place to get some. To get some perspective check on, where they can go with their disease. You can easily be down here with these guys and be struggling with the kind of problems that they're struggling with when, you basically still have everything that you had in your life. And, but that's the bigger thing is My level of tolerance for, frankly, the dumb newcomer shit.
It's hard when they're acting a fool and you don't want to see them get hurt. Your
Yeah.
interest is not watching
Yeah.
them get hurt.
And I can get invested with my guy. Like once I've made the commitment to help this guy, I can overcome that very easily. Where I struggle with is the guys that are in there that I'm not working with, and I kind of have a tendency to want to shut them out because frankly I can only handle so much newcomer slime in a day.
Me too. The other thing, though, I think is so important, and again, you pick up these phrases. I think I got this from you. I'd heard it before in reference to yoga, and that is hold the space. So at the same time, I'm being relatable to a degree. I need to hold this space that I am healed. I am on the outside of the sickness. I have this wonderful life. I have all these tools working for me. And there's a light that I'm holding out to you like a lighthouse. It's an old phrase in AA about the old dogs are lighthouses in the stormy seas to bring these guys into shore. So I don't want to get down the gutter and be like, hey, man, yeah, I know what you mean. It sucks to be an addict. No, that's not going to help them in any way. It might make my ego feel more comfortable because I want them to like me, right? Or I want them to feel like I got the bones that I'm a real addict. Eventually, you will get to a place once you sponsor enough guys, I promise it's happened for me too, where it changes and you don't even care whether they believe you're a real addict. You know what you are. You know your suffering was real. You know you paid your price and you had that dark night of the soul. It's not my job to have to prove it to you. I don't even I do it at meetings. I did in the last meeting I spoke in New York a couple weeks ago where I qualified myself and said, oh yeah, I've done a few things. But I'm not a fan of that anymore. I like to talk more about the solution and about if you just do this, you're going to have so many good things in your life you won't look back. And for anybody that's out there suffering right now and not understanding, what we're saying is the people you're seeing at meetings who are smiling and happy, they have found a better drug than the best drug you're doing right now. And you need to hear that. We are payoff people. We're not doing this to be saints. We're not doing this because we want to be good people. No, I'm doing this because I have found something better. It works longer, more effective. There's less consequences, no hangovers. And I hold that space. I'm going to hold that space of juice and say, hey, man, I got some really good shit, and I want to give it to you. I'm not going to get down and lie in the gutter with you to have to give it to you. Does that make sense in any way?
Yeah. Yep.
It's hard, though, because, you do want to sort of hook your guy. What works for you to hook your guy, do you think?
What works to hook the guy?
Yeah, I mean, when you're working with a guy and you can see he's kind of halfway there,
Yeah.
but then you say something that perks him up and he goes, hey, I heard that.
Yeah. I'll tell you where I get people's attention is I tell them that story that night breaking in that house. And
There you
I tell
go.
them that. And, usually that blows them away because they can't possibly they don't think that could possibly be the guy that's sitting across the room from them. So, and guys will tell me that too. They'll be like, well, man, when you told me, because it's insanity that I got up and walked away from a girlfriend on the couch and went across the street and broke in the house and then beat by a baseball bat and pepper sprayed and didn't come home until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I can tell that story pretty clearly. As far as it just dawned on me though, if we have tools here, and if I'm struggling with some particular thing, we can inventory it. And you can take like that topic, relatability to the newcomers, what's blocking you, what kind of things, and inventory like some specific things, and go and track them and keep the little notebook in your pocket. And when it happens, turn around the corner and write it down so you can inventory it, and then talk to your sponsor about it, and then do a 6 and 7 on it. And if you got some amends to make, you can go if you harmed anybody in the meantime. And I think you can apply that specific thing that you're struggling with. You can take and use the steps on anything like that.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'd say about it is we were talking about inches and seconds, which is where we see higher power show up when we're using, right? Like, why did the car not go into the tree but into the mailbox? That was kind of how it came up. And we're talking about the existence of power greater than us, higher power, things like that. And I said, yeah, like when somebody fires a gun at you point blank range and you're still here today and you don't know where the bullet went. And one of my patients, I could see them react like that. What? And they wrote in the chat, we have to talk about this. And so I said, before I went on break, I just said to him, I said, look, man, all I can say about that in the time we have, I would just say, when somebody's jacking your wallet and they have a gun, don't tell them to go fuck themselves. That's all I have to. That's my experience. That's my experience with them. And that was enough for them. I didn't have to regale the whole story, right? And again, I don't think nothing impresses an addict anyway. They all have egos, and so whatever you tell them, they're going to think you're bullshit, or they're going to think that you're not nearly as got the bones that they do for what they went through, because their stuff's so heavy and deep and they're different. So just be yourself. That's what I would suggest. But I love the spirit of this, is that you're just trying to find more ways to reach the newcomer. Amen. And man, that is a gift. Amen. Stay with that. That is beautiful. All right. Well, that's all the questions we have for this week. We really appreciate you all being with us. We don't hit you over the head with this one, but once a podcast, we'd like to ask you to please like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Our goal is to spread this as wide as we can, and our numbers are great. We are starting to get some serious numbers building up, but we cannot reach the people who need to hear this until those analytics catch up with our numbers. Right now, our numbers are a drop in the bucket compared to these other people on YouTube. So we need your help. We need you, the listener, to just give us that support. Like, subscribe, comment, and send us emails. And all that will help us raise our profile so that we can spread this message to more people. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for being with us. We love you. And we like to close each podcast with the Serenity Prayer. So, if you'd like to join me, Dan, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, keep coming back. Your works if you work it, and you die if you don't. Woo! Have fun out there. Come back, see us next time. We love you.